everybody, it's Nicole Epps. This is a video for Judy Vang's practicum class for Social Work 648. So just a little disclaimer beforehand, if you're not in this class, please refrain from viewing this video as there is confidential information. The client that I've chosen to provide the case study on, I've named him Johnny. He is a 38-year-old white male. He has several diagnoses, including a moderate developmental disability, or what would be termed intellectual disability now. And he is also diagnosed with a substance abuse disorder and schizophrenia, oppositional defiant disorder, and attention deficit disorder. Several of the diagnoses were given when he was a youth, and several of them I've worked with him for years and haven't noticed some of the diagnoses that he's been provided. So such as schizophrenia, he takes no medications, but yeah, I've not seen any signs of him being schizophrenic. So some of that could have been things that were going on in his youth and substance abuse challenges, things like that. He attends our program, which is a behavior support program for adults with developmental disabilities. It's a vendored program through the regional center. And while he attends there, he works on building work skills. He gets paid for the work that he does, and we provide support and education in behavior management for conflict resolution and things like that, money management, and other skills. He's also received ILS through our agency, which is Independent Living Services. So he's worked with an instructor in the community to build living skills such as budgeting and money management and grocery shopping, things like that. The background and history for this client: his mother was also in special education all of her life. He had a very challenging upbringing. His mother, I believe, had several different relationships while he was a youth. And one of her boyfriends actually abused the client, and he was hurt badly enough to require medical attention at one point. So he ultimately did become a dependent of the county and was placed with the county because he could not remain with his family of origin any longer due to neglect and abusive situations that were repeatedly occurring. He was in many foster homes in his youth and was eventually placed in a facility for boys with severe emotional disturbances. And that was actually his 8th residential placement within 2 years of his youth. So he was previously with 5 different family foster homes and 3 different group homes. He received special education throughout his entire academic career. And then in his adulthood, he was placed in different care homes by the regional center. He was actually assigned a conservatorship through the public guardian in early adulthood for about a year, and in assessments it's unclear as to why the conservatorship ended. He did have a lot of legal challenges and a lot of run-ins with the law, so it seems that that could be why the conservatorship began. So it may have been some sort of temporary situation. And then he also received supported employment for a couple of years and had a variety of jobs in fast food settings when he was a younger adult. In early adulthood, he became increasingly involved in many verbal altercations and would often quit his job, so he wasn't able to continue with supported employment and continue with community placement positions. He became very, very involved in the use of drugs, and he reportedly has used crank, PCP, speed, and LSD. And at various times in his life, he has recognized that he needs some sort of type of rehabilitation program. He has participated in these types of programs on and off. He also has reportedly been involved with gangs, and he has many tattoos that seem to be gang affiliated, and he's spoken about getting some of those removed at different points in time. So he's also been married twice. Both of his wives actually passed away due to an overdose, and Johnny actually found his second wife after she had overdosed on heroin. So he's had a strong tendency, to meet women and friends that are involved in a lot of illegal activity. So He will give all of his money to those that he meets, including friends and girlfriends and things like that, because he's very, very eager to please and eager to be involved with friendships and relationships and have meaningful relationships in his life. So he has a difficult time establishing those relationships and not kind of being taken advantage of in those situations. So he will he's very, very giving. He'll give basically anything that he has to be able to continue relationships that are meaningful to him and that he feels are special in his life. He currently dates a woman that's in prison, and he sends the majority of his work money to her actually while she's in the facility. So he will pay for, extra food and for her to have things while she's there. He'll put money on her books or pay for calling cards, things like that. So their relationship exists through calls, and he does visit her and things along those lines. So we've had trouble with him. He will just avoid eating and will starve himself to make sure that he's giving to somebody that he cares about. So he'll spend all of his money and will give it to his girlfriend that's in prison before feeding himself or taking care of his own needs. So he has a lot of difficulty with that. And then to discuss research topics that are relevant to Johnny, it's important to mention the involvement of adults with developmental disabilities and the criminal justice system. So there's a substantial amount of victimization, of course, with adults with developmental disabilities. And those with developmental disabilities are often asked to perform dangerous tasks for, friends or family. So this client has a strong tendency to call people family that aren't actually blood related or biological, and to call people friends when really they, probably don't necessarily have his best interest in mind. So he has had a lot of involvement in illegal activities and things like that. So it's important to know how easy it is for him to be victimized in those types of situations, and that it happens often with him. So another important topic to discuss is how he has the tendency to end up in situations that he doesn't understand fully. So along those same lines, he'll be told or asked to do something, and he might not fully understand what he was asked to do that was illegal, and he'll just go ahead and proceed and do it because, like I said, he wants to have that family or that friendship that he maybe hasn't had in his life. And then I think the most important theoretical perspective when working with this client is the strengths perspective. The client responds very well to positive interactions and taking the time to see how he's doing and checking in with him. He likes to kind of discuss his life, and he is fairly open with sharing information and sharing what's going on. He will pick up quickly if you start to kind of ask questions and are worried about him being taken advantage of and things like that. He might sort of hesitate to share some information, but initially he is typically pretty open to giving information about his life and what's going on with him. So he responds well to encouragement and reminding him of his valuable strengths and that he is able to work and come to work daily, and that he has a lot of strengths too. So he does have a tendency to forget what those strengths are. So he responds well to being reminded that he does have a good set of skills as well. And it's really important to remember as a worker that's working with him how much this client has overcome. So while he continues to struggle with boundaries, of course, he's survived so much and shows a vast amount of resiliency. So he's a really cool client to work with in that way, because he's just overcome so much and he's come from a lot of challenges, yet he still comes to work every day and he still is prepared to try to take care of people that he cares for and earn money and things like that. While he doesn't always use that money on things that would benefit him best, he definitely tries to work and earn money and make something better of himself. He's very, very motivated, and he he likes to be busy. He's not lazy in any sense at all. He likes to do stuff for himself. So he currently lives with his cousin and his cousin's family. So that includes 2 teenagers and the cousin's wife. And it's unclear whether they're biological family. So like I said, he has a tendency to call a lot of people family. And the client seems content with this living situation. There have been concerns regarding money and making sure that the client isn't taken advantage of, but he does express contentment with his current living situation. He recently finished working with the carnival, which he's done seasonally on and off for many years. So there are several concerns with this client, working with the carnival and being a part of that population, because there has a tendency, at least from what he's shared, to be, some criminal activity and drug use and things like that, and just some situations that are challenging for him. But he does repeatedly return to work with the carnival, and it's typically something that he's pretty proud of. He likes to earn the money and he likes to be busy, like I said, so that's something that he just continues to do. And Johnny was living with his mother and stepfather when he, this was about a year and a half ago, but he ultimately moved with his cousin because he stated that he could not handle the arguing between his mother and stepfather due to his mother's on and off sobriety. So she also has struggled with having a developmental disability and has struggled with her sobriety and has been sober on and off, and he's talked about how it's difficult for him to be around the arguing that can be related to that. It sounds like the stepfather, of course, has difficulty when the mom is drinking or using again, so that became a situation that he no longer wanted to live in. And Johnny attends our program to work and earn money, gain vocational skills, and we also work on creating a healthy lifestyle and establishing and maintaining good boundaries. So for him, that's a really critical component of the program, taking classes on healthy relationships and conflict resolution, ways to communicate effectively and things like that, because he can have those challenges with establishing good boundaries for himself. So like I mentioned, he comes to work daily. He does require reminders to discuss appropriate topics and avoid talking about prison or drugs while working. He's encouraged to discuss those things with staff when he feels he would like to talk about those types of topics. But of course it can, make other clients kind of uneasy if they're hearing those things that he's discussing. And it's also just important for us to teach him good topics to discuss, because he ultimately would like to work in the community again. And those types of topics are not good, of course, to discuss in community positions. So the program is currently encouraging him to reestablish independent living services because he has the desire to live on his own again. He requires support with grocery shopping and budgeting, and he requires support with budgeting his spending money, even though he has a payee. So like I mentioned, he will give money to a lot of people, especially his girlfriend currently. So a very positive thing with Johnny lately, he's stayed out of jail for the last couple of years. He doesn't currently participate in NA, but he has stated that he's found it important in the past. So it's kind of an on and off support in his life. And his relationship with his girlfriend is also a current, he views it as a strength. Of course, what we've all seen is that there are some challenges with him being taken advantage of with his money and things like that, but he often calls her and visits her. He hasn't spoken about his friends much lately, but it's very easy for him to be taken advantage of in the general population. So that can often happen with his friendships as well. His relationship with his service coordinator at the regional center is somewhat uncertain at this time, just because the regional center has had to work a lot with law enforcement in the past, and so he's become a little bit uneasy about their relationship over time and will actually directly tell the service coordinator that he doesn't like her and things like that. He, of course, had a lot of involvement with drug abuse, and he had a lot of people staying at his home at one time that were dangerous even to law enforcement, including people that were prostituting and people that were selling drugs. So the regional center worker was not ever able to meet the client, you know, without law enforcement being involved and things like that. So he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about working with her and the regional center, but he does not discontinue service or anything like that because he has our program through the regional center since we're vendored through them. And he also, at the same time that he struggles with the service coordinator and with the way that they've had to work with law enforcement and things like that, he also recognizes that there have been several times where he has been in a lot of trouble and has not been able to get himself out of that trouble without support or at least help make the situation a little bit better. So the last home that he was staying in was very dangerous and had a lot of criminal activity, and the home literally was torn apart on areas where the walls were ripped apart, there were drawings, and people just majorly took advantage of him because his rent was paid, of course, by his payee, and the situation was just very negative. So I think he's still kind of recovering from those interactions and things like that. So I'm going to go over the eco map that I've made for Johnny. So this just kind of describes the different areas of his life that I've discussed. So this is the key down here. So his relationship with his mother and stepfather is a stressful relationship. His friends, the relationship is kind of uncertain at this point, and typically the relationship has more influence on Johnny because there's a lot of encouragement by people to do things, give money, things like that. The girlfriend, there's a strong influence, and the influence is mostly on Johnny by money and things like that. The regional center, it's a little bit uncertain at this point. That goes back and forth. So ultimately, hopefully that will get stronger again. His cousin, there's a strong relationship there. I'm not as sure about that relationship because the family doesn't, they're not involved in services and things like that, so they don't attend meetings or anything. So it does seem like there is a strong impact on Johnny. I'm not sure if the relationship has equal participation. And then the carnival, it's uncertain. He works at the carnival seasonally, like I said, and that impacts Johnny mostly. So he also has a tendency to be taken advantage of in that environment. And then the work program, he seems to participate equally, and the relationship seems to be equal. Independent living services is uncertain right now. And then NA, the relationship typically is contributed on both parts, but it's uncertain right now as well. So that's Johnny. Thank you for watching. Bye.